This next lesson is going to cover what are called inverse trig. Inverse trig ratios are a way of finding missing angles, and that's our learning target 5. I can use inverse trig ratios to find missing angles. So this is our second learning target of our level 3 work. Remember, in order to do this, we need to understand trig ratios, which was one of our level 2 targets. And it comes after our using trig ratios to solve for missing sides. Let's consider this. What is the measure of the angle? We are given a triangle with a 4 and a 10. We could use Pythagorean theorem, but that only helps us figure out this last side right here. But that's not what we're asked for. We're asked to find a missing angle. We could maybe use special right triangles. But the 4 was not doubled to make the hypotenuse, so this is not a 30, 60, 90 triangle, nor is it a 45, 45. So neither of these skills helps us. We're going to have to use trig ratios to find this missing angle. So this is what begins our talk about inverse trig. How do you use inverse trig? This is what inverse trig looks like. It is a way of finding angles. An angle can be equal to sine inverse of opposite of hypotenuse. Notice that we have a couple new things. There's this little negative one here, which means inverse. And also, instead of putting the angle next to the sine, we're putting the sides next to the sine. We can do inverse tangent as well as inverse cosine. We use all of these to find missing angles. And we only ever put sides next to each of these functions. We don't ever put an angle next to inverse any of the sine, cosine, or tangent functions. So only put sides next to these inverse trig functions. Try these out in your calculator. Remember when you're typing in fractions to use parentheses so that you can type in the full fraction in one go. Pause the video, type them all in, write down your answers, and let's see if you get the same answers I get. Here are my answers. Hopefully you got the same thing. If you didn't, pause the video again, call me over, and let's talk about them. Okay, let's use our first example. Find the measurement of the missing angle. Round to the nearest degree. We're going to figure out what information was given to us based upon the angle that they want us to find. Angle X is the one they want us to find. 15.7 is my opposite, and that means 59 is my adjacent. Hypotenuse is not important for this problem. So what is opposite over adjacent? Well, that'd be tangent. So my tangent of my x angle is equal to 15.7 over 59. We do the inverse of tangent to actually get my angle x. So the inverse of tangent of 15.7 over 59. Type this into your calculator and you would get approximately 15 degrees. We're rounding to the nearest degree, so make sure you look at the first decimal place and round it up or keep it the same depending upon if it's larger or smaller than 5. Okay, you go ahead and try to set up this problem and solve it for the missing angle. Pause the video and then unpause it to check your answer. I have adjacent and hypotenuse. So in this problem, I want to use cosine. So the cosine of y is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. To get the y by itself and solve for the angle, we use the inverse of cosine since we chose cosine, and we do this to the 10 over 12. My y will be approximately 34 degrees. After my 33, there was a 0.5, so I rounded the 3 up to a 4, giving me 34 degrees. Let's use inverse in order to find an angle of elevation. So there's a kid, and he's flying a kite on a 50-foot string. What is the angle of elevation if the kite is 30 feet off of the ground? So let's draw a picture to understand where all the pieces go on our triangle. So there's the kid. He's holding a string. It goes up to a kite. And this string is 50 feet. The kite is 30 feet off of the ground, and that completes my triangle. So the angle of elevation is right here because it's where the kid would have to look forward and then look up. My 30 in this problem is an opposite, and my 50 is the hypotenuse. There is no number on the adjacent, so I don't care about the adjacent. What uses opposite and hypotenuse? Well, that would be sine. So the sine of angle x is equal to opposite 30 over 50 hypotenuse. To get the x by itself, we do the opposite of sine, which is inverse sine, and we're going to inverse the sides in order to get the angle. Now it's time to use our calculator. My calculator gave me approximately 37 degrees, and yes, this is rounded up. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and give this problem a try. Unpause it to see the answer. Call me over if you do not get the same answer I get. Okay, so I have a truck. I'll try to draw this truck nice and big. And there's a ramp that comes off of the back of it and comes down and hits the ground. Now, this ramp is 15 feet. And it is 4 feet off the ground. So there's my right triangle. I want to know what the angle of depression is. Remember, the angle of depression is not down here on the ground. It's the angle of depression would be going straight out and then looking down. So first I need to figure out what is the angle in my triangle. So that would be right here, this little x angle. I have the adjacent side and I have the hypotenuse. I've drawn a larger triangle so that you can see all the pieces. So in this problem, adjacent and hypotenuse means that I need to use cosine. So the cosine of my x angle will be equal to my adjacent 4 over my hypotenuse 15. Let's now use the inverse of cosine on those sides in order to figure out the angle. I get 75 degrees approximately. Now that is only the angle inside of the triangle. This is the x. It's not the question mark. To get the question mark, we're going to have to take 90 and minus the 75 to actually get my final answer. And 90 minus 75 is 15 degrees. That is my final answer. So again, we were working on Learning Target 5. I can use inverse trig ratios to find missing angles. And this was a level 3 target. In order to use it, we definitely need to have been really good at Learning Target 3, making trig ratios, as well as Learning Target 4, setting up those trig equations. Don't forget to hit the submit button so I have record of you watching the video.